The conflict had dragged on for so many generations that most creatures across the stars couldn't recall its beginning. Three mighty forces dominated everything. The Zapirian Empire held the center, their settlements built from pure light drifting through the cosmos. They considered themselves the most ancient and clever species. The Corven Federation spread like disease across the outer edges, countless insect-like beings functioning as a single consciousness. The Nexari Collective commanded every trading path connecting worlds. Their tentacled vessels transported merchandise and information. For 8 centuries, these three giants had clashed, bargained, and negotiated. None could fully crush the others. The stars remained trapped in a never-ending cycle of battle and truce that accomplished nothing. High Commander Zethar of the Corven Third Fleet wasn't thinking about ancient conflicts today. His vessels needed resources, and his scouts had located a simple mark. The blue-green planet circled a yellow sun in a peaceful corner of the void. The creatures living there hadn't even mastered travel among the stars yet. Ideal. The world displays evidence of society. His scanning officer communicated through the hive mind connection, but their advancements are extremely primitive. No protective barriers, no advanced energy guns. They still use burning fuel for electricity. Zethar's mandibles clicked with pleasure. How many craft do they possess in orbit? Just a handful of tiny outposts circling their planet. Nothing capable of harming us. The High Commander sensed the hive mind's approval flowing into him. This would be a swift takeover. The Third Fleet would seize what they required and depart. Perhaps they'd capture some specimens for examination. The Corvins constantly needed fresh slave races. Deploy the forward scouts. Complete assault arrangement. We capture their space stations first, then descend to the ground. 12 Corven battleships approached Earth. Each vessel stretched half a mile, wrapped in dark plating that had endured conflicts throughout the cosmos. Their armaments had obliterated whole fleets. The humans had witnessed nothing comparable. Captain Sarah Morrison commanded from the bridge of the UE's Defiance, Earth's most recent warship. She observed the strange vessels materialize on her displays and felt her pulse quicken. This was the scenario they'd prepared for. Yet nobody truly expected its arrival. 12 craft approaching, her weapons officer announced. Configuration unknown. They're larger than anything we have recorded. Any communication? Silence, Captain. They're ignoring all our attempts at contact. Sarah examined the strategic display. The foreign ships advanced in flawless formation, like performers who'd rehearsed the identical routine countless times. Earth's protection fleet contained merely 8 vessels, and they were considerably smaller than the incoming craft. All vessels, this is Morrison, establish protective formation around Station Alpha. Keep them away from it. The UES Defiance and her companion ships moved to block them. They'd been constructed using humanity's finest achievements. Atomic propulsion, electromagnetic cannons that launched rounds at breathtaking velocities, and plating forged from asteroid belt materials. The craft were durable and quick, but they'd never faced actual warfare. Zethar observed the basic ships arranging themselves between his fleet and their orbital platform. See them, he broadcast to his fleet. They believe those small craft can challenge us. Should we request their yielding first? His strategic officer inquired. Negative, we'll eliminate them rapidly and proceed. The hive mind wastes no time on diversions. The Corven ships unleashed fire. Streams of superheated matter erupted from their guns. The identical force that had liquefied the armor of countless opponent fleets. The humans would be annihilated within moments. Except something went wrong. The human ships shifted. Not the gradual expected maneuvers that the Corvins anticipated, but quick, aggressive pivots that appeared to defy physics itself. The energy streams missed their marks by tremendous distances. What's their tactic? Zethar demanded. Before anyone responded, the human craft returned fire. But they didn't employ energy arms. Instead, solid steel projectiles shot from their electromagnetic guns at a remarkable portion of light velocity. The rounds struck the forward Corven vessel and penetrated directly through its plating like tissue. The craft detonated in a burst of fire and fragments. Unthinkable, the scanning officer breathed. Our armor should have deflected those backward weapons. Attack once more. All craft, focus your assault. But the humans were already shifting. Their vessels separated, each pursuing a distinct trajectory. Some plunged toward the world, exploiting its pull to accelerate. Others launched upward, approaching the Corvins from overhead. They operated like hunting animals, each craft assisting the others, yet deciding for itself. Captain Morrison experienced the forces crushing her into her seat as the Defiance executed a maneuver that would have terminated anyone without the advanced pressure suits. Focus on the largest one at the middle. Complete barrage, all electromagnetic guns launch. 6 electromagnetic projectiles hammered the Corven command ship simultaneously. The foreign vessel shook and started venting air but didn't detonate. Its plating was too dense. Change to atomic missiles, Morrison commanded. Captain, we're positioned too near for atomic arms. Have faith in me. The Defiance released a lone rocket. It flew toward the damaged Corven craft and erupted just as the human vessel raced past at full velocity. The atomic blast caught the foreign ship in its explosion, but the Defiance had already moved too far to suffer serious harm. The Corven command ship fractured, its structure splitting like fragile shell. Zethar discovered himself drifting in the void, his vessel's survival mechanisms having barely succeeded in getting him to a survival capsule. Surrounding him, the wreckage of his fleet floated in burning fragments. In under 60 minutes, the humans had demolished 11 of his 12 craft. How could this happen? The Corvs had waged conflicts across the stars. They understood every armament, every maneuver, every approach that succeeded in void combat. Yet these humans battled unlike anything he'd witnessed. They exploited their own world's pull as a tool. They launched solid rounds rather than energy streams. They maneuvered their craft separately rather than in arrangement. They even utilized atomic detonations at near distance, something that should have destroyed their own vessels. Most peculiar of all, they appeared to welcome the disorder. While core and craft cooperated through the hive mind, the human vessels seemed to be inventing their approaches during the fight. Each commander was conducting their individual combat, yet somehow they all functioned together flawlessly. A human craft neared his survival capsule. Zethar readied himself for an honorable end. But rather than destroying him, they drew him inside their vessel. The foreigners wanted conversation. Captain Morrison examined the insect-like being seated opposite her in the vessel's conference chamber. It stood roughly 7 feet in height with 4 limbs and multifaceted eyes that caught the illumination like precious stones. Its shell-like covering was black and metallic, and it carried the scent of industrial lubricant. You comprehend our speech, she remarked, astonished. The hive mind adapts swiftly, Zethar answered, his words emerging through a conversion instrument. We analyzed the transmissions we captured. Your tongue is straightforward. Straightforward enough to defeat your fleet completely. The Corven warrior's mandibles clicked in what could have been humor. Affirmative, you battle unlike anything we've faced. Why don't you employ energy armaments? Because these function superior. Morrison indicated the electromagnetic gun design on the wall display. Energy matter scatters across range and can be redirected by force fields. A piece of steel traveling at 30% of light velocity ignores your defenses and the atomic arms at near range. We constructed our craft to withstand it. You failed to. Zethar remained quiet for an extended period. Within the hive mind, he sensed the bewilderment and terror of his kind. They possessed guidelines for combat that had succeeded for ages. The humans had apparently chosen to disregard them entirely. What do you require from me? He inquired eventually. Details. Who are your people? Where's your origin? And what caused you to assault us? I am High Commander Zethar of the Corven Federation. We arrived searching for provisions and simple conquest territory. Your planet seemed backward and vulnerable. Well, you got one thing correct. Morrison rose and approached the window displaying Earth suspended in the void beneath them. Here's the situation. You'll carry a communication back to your kind. Inform them that Earth refuses to be conquered, enslaved, or intimidated. If they desire conversation, they can dispatch ambassadors. If they desire battle, they can dispatch fleets. But if they strike our civilians once more, we'll locate their home planets and reciprocate. You misunderstand, Zethar stated urgently. The Corven Federation commands thousands of planets. Our fleets count in the millions of craft. You cannot challenge us all. Perhaps not, Morrison conceded, but we'll certainly attempt it. And judging by today's outcome, I believe we'll perform better than you anticipate. She turned back toward him. There's another point you should grasp. This isn't even our strongest fleet. These craft were constructed 5 years past. We've developed newer models that make these look like playthings, and we're manufacturing more daily. Zethar felt a shiver course through his exterior shell. The humans had destroyed his fleet with their outdated vessels. What manner of species had the Corvens encountered? I'll convey your communication, he stated softly. Excellent. Oh, and another matter. Morrison grinned, but it wasn't a warm expression. Inform your commanders that humans despise oppressors. and we possess an extremely long recollection for those who harm our allies. 3 days afterward, Zethar's survival capsule was recovered by a Corven patrol craft near the boundary of human territory. His account transmitted shock throughout the Federation High Command, and from there to every region of the stars. The Zapirian Emperor absorbed the information in his crystalline fortress, drifting in the emptiness between suns. His energy-based presence flickered with curiosity as he examined the converted reports. Intriguing, he murmured to his counselors. A fresh species that demolishes Corven fleets with backward arms. We must discover more about these humans. In the Nexari commercial centers, tentacled traders whispered about the profit possibilities. A species that could construct fresh arms so rapidly would require basic resources. There were riches to be acquired. But deep within Corven territory, the response was distinct. The hive mind burned at the humiliation. No inferior species had ever shamed them so thoroughly. The humans would suffer for their insolence. Combat fleets started to assemble in the darkness between suns. On Earth, Captain Morrison commanded in the instruction chamber of Luna Base, addressing delegates from every nation. The initial interaction guidelines that negotiators had drafted generations ago appeared almost ridiculous now. Ladies and gentlemen, she started, I have positive information and troubling information. The positive information is that we're not isolated in the cosmos, and we just demonstrated that we can protect ourselves. The troubling information is that we've likely just initiated the largest conflict in human existence. The chamber exploded with inquiries, but Morrison raised her palm for quiet. The matter now is straightforward. Do we conceal ourselves behind our sun and wish they abandon us? Or do we advance into the stars and demonstrate to everyone that humanity refuses to be intimidated? Admiral Chen, Morrison's commanding officer, advanced forward. The choice has been finalized. We're not concealing. If there's going to be conflict, we'll conduct it according to our conditions, not theirs. Morrison acknowledged and triggered the three-dimensional display. It revealed star maps that extended across the nearby section of the cosmos, indicating the domains of the three mighty forces. Then we'd better prepare ourselves, because once this information circulates, the entire cosmos is going to desire to understand what makes humans so hazardous. She halted and surveyed the chamber at the expressions of Earth's commanders. And we're going to reveal them. Information of the Corven humiliation spread to every region of the stars within days. The three mighty forces had preserved their equilibrium for so extended that any shift transmitted waves through the void. A fresh participant had joined the contest, and everyone desired to understand what it signified for them. Ambassador of the Zapirian Empire commanded in the assembly chamber of his command ship, observing Earth expand larger on the primary display. His energy presence flickered with deliberate consideration as he readied for humanity's initial official interaction with cosmic society. The accounts from the Corven survivor are challenging to accept, stated his military counselor, a younger Zapirian, whose illumination pulsed with doubt. How can such a backward species demolish an entire fleet? Perhaps they are not as backward as we believed, Veltar answered. The Emperor desires to comprehend these humans before choosing how to address them. If they can be directed appropriately, they could benefit the Empire greatly. The Zapirian craft descended through Earth's air like descending meteors. Unlike the harsh metal shapes of Corvan construction, these vessels seem to be formed of solidified illumination itself. They traveled soundlessly, their exteriors sparkling with energy, designs that pained human vision to observe straight. President Martinez commanded in the greeting chamber that had been rapidly built at the United Nations structure. Surrounding him, the commanders of Earth waited anxiously. This was their initial encounter with foreigners who arrived peacefully, and nobody felt certain what to anticipate. The Zapirian ambassador formed in the middle of the chamber without any apparent entrance. His presence was roughly human-shaped, but composed entirely of moving blue and white force. When he communicated, his voice appeared to originate from all directions simultaneously. Salutations, inhabitants of Earth. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Zapirian Empire. We arrive as companions and defenders. President Martinez advanced forward, attempting not to reveal how disturbed he felt by the foreign's form. Welcome to Earth, Ambassador. We're grateful for your presence. Your recent struggle with the Corvs has captured our interest, Veltar proceeded. The stars are a hazardous location for immature societies. The Empire has served as guardian to lesser species, providing defense and direction in return for devotion and contribution. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's principal alien researcher scowled at the converter's selection of terms. Lesser species. Take no insult, Veltar stated, his presence brightening somewhat. All species must start somewhere. The Zapirians have traveled among the suns for 50,000 years. We have acquired much about endurance in this hostile cosmos. You would gain tremendously from our knowledge. And what would this defense require from us? Inquired General Kim, Earth's fresh head of planetary protection. Minimal. You would position your military forces under Empire authority. Naturally, your industrial capacity would be guided towards advancing the collective benefit. Your inhabitants would be instructed in appropriate cosmic society. In exchange, you would be secure from dangers like the Correns. The chamber became silent. President Martinez glanced around at his counselors, observing the identical consideration reflected in every expression. They were being presented the opportunity to become subordinates. We value your proposition, Martinez stated cautiously, but humanity chooses to manage its own protection. Veltar's energy presence pulsed with what could have been astonishment. You fail to comprehend the circumstances. Without Empire defense, the Corvens will arrive in greater quantities. Your triumph was remarkable, but it was against a lone scout fleet. When they dispatch their combat fleets, your modest craft will be inadequate. Then we'll construct larger craft, stated General Kim. With what materials? What understanding? You are youngsters manipulating toys while elders conduct conflict with arms that could fracture worlds. Dr. Vasquez advanced forward. Perhaps we're youngsters, but we're rapid students. And youngsters occasionally perceive solutions that elders overlook. Before Veltar could answer, warnings started sounding throughout the structure. A fresh fleet had materialized in Earth's solar region. The Nexari Collective's commercial flotilla was impossible to confuse for anything else. Their craft resembled enormous sea beings, all bends and streaming contours. Appendage-like connection arms protruded from every surface, and their exteriors were wrapped in promotional screens that flashed in countless distinct tongues. Trade Prince Sex Mura had arrived to Earth directly, his command ship guiding a group of merchant vessels. Unlike the Zapirians with their propositions of defense or the Corvenans with their warnings of invasion, the Nexari delivered agreements. Humans of Earth, Kexamora declared as his image materialized on displays around the world. The Nexari Collective praises you on your recent triumph. Such military capability deserves compensation, and we are ready to provide exclusive commercial arrangements that will advantage both our kinds. The Trade Prince's form was disturbing in a distinct way from the Zapirians. He resembled a combination between a tentacled creature and a floating organism, his transparent body drifting in a container of fluid that his craft projected as a three-dimensional image. When he communicated, his appendages shifted in designs that the conversion mechanism struggled to understand. We provide manufactured items, basic resources, and advanced innovations in return for straightforward goods and workforce arrangements. Your inhabitants labor diligently. We have learned this is precious in cosmic trade. Captain Morrison, who had been elevated to Admiral after her triumph over the Corvenans, examined the commercial agreements that the Nexari presented. They were remarkably complicated documents, countless pages extended and saturated with sections that appeared to oppose each other. I'm not a financial expert, she informed the bargaining team, but this resembles a sophisticated way to make us their subordinates. Dr. Vasquez concurred. Examine Section 47. They're proposing to supply basic resources for our vessel building, but Section 93 states we must vend them completed products at reduced market values, and Section 128 grants them sole rights to all our transport paths. It's a burden snare, stated Economics Minister Park. They supply just adequate assistance to make us reliant, then progressively assume authority of our entire financial system. President Martinez massaged his forehead, sensing a pain developing. So the Zapirians desire us to be their warriors, and the Nexari desire us to be their laborers. What's following? As if called forth by his words, the third interaction arrived not as a fleet, but as a lone, enormous craft that formed in Earth's solar region without any notice. It was massive, readily 10 times larger than anything the humans had constructed, and its dark exterior appeared to consume illumination like an opening in the void. The craft transmitted a straightforward communication. Yield immediately or confront destruction. You have offended the Corven Federation. This offense requires retribution. Admiral Morrison examined the strategic display revealing the enormous foreign battleship. It was readily large enough to transport thousands of attackers and adequate firepower to devastate continents. This was what a genuine Corven combat vessel resembled. "How extended until our fresh craft are prepared?" she inquired her principal technician. "The initial group won't be completed for another month," Commander Torres answered. "The fresh models are still being evaluated. We don't possess a month." Morrison turned to her transmissions officer. "Dispatch a communication to all Earthcraft. Complete mobilization. Everything we possess." "Admiral, our entire fleet is merely 12 craft. That object could likely demolish us without even delaying." "Likely, but we're not going to simplify it." The Corven craft designated Terror of the Void was truly a vessel constructed to shatter the determination of entire star regions. Its commander, High Admiral Thevar, had supervised the conquest of 17 distinct species. He had arrived to Earth anticipating to discover a trembling population, ready to yield rather than confront his vessel's dreadful arms. Instead, he discovered the humans readying for combat. "They're actually going to challenge us," his strategic officer announced with wonder. "Their entire fleet is advancing to block us." "Foolish." Thevar clicked his mandibles in contentment. "They absorbed nothing from our earlier meeting. Reveal them the capability of a genuine Corven battleship. The Terror of the Void unleashed fire with its primary arms, enormous particle streams that could slice through asteroid collections. The initial attacks missed as the human craft dispersed in all paths. But Thevar wasn't troubled. There was nowhere for them to flee. But the humans weren't fleeing. Admiral Morrison had analyzed every aspect of the initial combat, and she believed she grasped what made humans distinct from other species in the cosmos. Other species battled according to guidelines and customs. Humans invented fresh guidelines as they proceeded. "All craft implement Plan Desperate," she transmitted. Plan Desperate was not actually a legitimate military approach. It was what Morrison designated their alternative plan for when everything else collapsed and they had to attempt something reckless. The UES Defiance guided the assault directly at the Corven supercraft, pursued by 3 other human vessels. They flew directly into the opponent's arms fire, absorbing strikes that would have demolished inferior craft. But the fresh human plating held and they continued advancing. At the final feasible instant, all 4 craft released their entire rocket loads and then employed their crisis thrusters to swerve away from the foreign vessel. Countless atomic missiles hammered the Terror of the Void's exterior in a synchronized assault that illuminated the void like a fresh sun. When the detonations disappeared, the Corven craft was still present, but its plating was fractured and burning air escaped from countless openings. "Unthinkable," Thevar snarled. "No one has ever harmed a Terror-class battleship with backward atomic arms. Sir, they're assaulting once more." "They battle like lunatics," the strategic officer announced. "No arrangement, no synchronization, no control." But Thevar was starting to grasp. The humans did possess synchronization, just not the variety that the Corvenans were accustomed to. Rather than a hive consciousness controlling every craft, each human commander was forming their own choices while somehow advancing the overall assault. It was disorder, but it was guided disorder. The Terror of the Void released everything it possessed, saturating the void with energy streams and matter projectiles. Several human craft absorbed serious harm, but they continued battling. One vessel, the Yui's Courage, had forfeited half its exterior to a direct strike, but it still succeeded to drive a complete barrage of rockets into the Corven craft's propulsion section. "Exterior violations on levels 40 through 60, the harm control officer announced. "Primary arms inactive. Propulsion capacity reduced to 30%. Thevar could not accept what he was learning. 8 modest human craft had disabled his mighty battleship. How is this feasible? The response arrived when the human fleet regrouped for a concluding assault. Rather than advancing in once more, they arranged themselves around the Terror of the Void and started releasing in deliberately synchronized barrages. Each attack struck the identical vulnerable locations that the earlier assaults had formed, progressively tearing the enormous craft apart fragment by fragment. "Sir, we must withdraw," his second in authority urged. "If we remain here, they'll demolish us." Thevar's mandibles clicked in irritated anger, but he wasn't foolish. "Communicate retreat. Complete withdrawal to the departure location." The Terror of the Void limped away from Earth, abandoning behind wreckage from its harmed sections and the destroyed remains of its standing. For the second occasion, the humans had conquered a Corven fleet, but this triumph arrived with a price. 3 human craft had been demolished and 2 more were so severely harmed they would require months of restoration. Earth's entire void fleet was diminished to 7 operational vessels. Admiral Morrison commanded on the bridge of the Defiance, examining the casualty accounts. 43 worthy individuals had perished protecting their planet, and she understood this was just the start. "Admiral," her transmissions officer announced, "we're obtaining communications from the foreign fleets. All 3 of them desire to converse." Morrison exhaled. The Zapirians were likely going to elevate their propositions of defense. The Nexari would desire to vend them replacement craft at expanded prices, and the Corvenans would be arranging their vengeance. Connect them. Let's observe what they have to state now. The primary display separated into 3 portions, revealing the delegates of all 3 cosmic forces. Ambassador Veltar's energy presence pulsed with what could have been admiration. Trade Prince Sexmura's appendages writhed with enthusiasm, and High Admiral Thevar's multifaceted eyes radiated with fury. "Humans of Earth," Veltar communicated first. "Your capability in combat has affected the Empire. We would prefer to revise our earlier proposition of defense. Perhaps a more balanced collaboration could be structured. The Collective is ready to provide premium values for your military contributions." Sexmore included rapidly. "Many species would compensate well for the defense of human battleships." "You have succeeded 2 combats," Thevar interrupted, his voice saturated with loathing. "But the Federation has fleets that count in the thousands. Your fortune will not persist forever." Admiral Morrison examined the 3 foreigners and sensed a period of perfect understanding. They were all frightened. The ancient forces that had dominated the stars for ages were suddenly doubtful, and humanity was the source of that doubt. "Gentlemen," she stated, employing the term flexibly, "you appear to be under the belief that we desire to participate your conflict. You're mistaken. We don't desire to be your defenders, your laborers, or your opponents. We desire to be abandoned to construct our own destiny." "That is not feasible," answered. "The cosmos does not permit neutrality. You must select a faction or others will select for you." Morrison grinned, and all 3 foreigners identified it as the expression humans formed when they were about to do something hazardous. "Then I suppose we'll have to transform how the cosmos functions." The transmission concluded, abandoning the 3 foreign fleets to reflect humanity's answer. In the depths of the void, ancient forces started to comprehend that their deliberately arranged cosmos was about to become much more complicated. On Earth, the genuine labor was just starting. 6 months after the initial interaction with the cosmic forces, humanity had transformed the guidelines of conflict in ways that no one anticipated. The foreigners believed they grasped how void combats functioned, but humans continued demonstrating them mistaken. Captain Marcus Rodriguez commanded on the bridge of the UE's Indomitable, observing his mark through the strategic display. The Corven supply group extended across the void like a sequence of metal spheres, 30 cargo craft defended by 12 battleships. It should have been unfeasible for a lone human vessel to endanger such a force. But Rodriguez was not arranging a customary assault. "Distance to mark," he inquired his arms officer. 40,000 kilometers approaching. "They've identified us, sir. The protection craft are advancing to block us." "Ideal. Allow them to arrive." The Indomitable was one of Earth's fresh craft constructed employing lessons absorbed from seized foreign innovation. It was quicker than anything the Corens possessed, and its arms were constructed specifically to exploit vulnerabilities in opponent plating. But its genuine benefit was something the foreigners could not construct into their craft. A team that considered for itself. "Complete halt," Rodriguez commanded. "Allow them to believe we're yielding." The Corven protection craft neared cautiously, their arrangement flawless and their arms powered. Through their hive consciousness connection, they distributed a lone consideration: seize the human vessel and absorb its information. They possessed no concept what was about to occur. Now, Rodriguez stated softly, the Indomitable did not release its arms. Rather, it discharged a cluster of small objects that resembled wreckage on Corven detectors. The opponent craft disregarded them, concentrating on the human vessel that seemed to be inactive in the void. The objects were not wreckage. They were humans in void suits, each one transporting a fusion charge and a thruster package. Lieutenant Sarah Kim sensed her pulse racing as she directed her suit toward the nearest Corven craft. This was lunacy, even by human measures. No military in the cosmos employed ground forces approaches in void combat. The foreigners would never anticipate it. Insertion teams announced status. Rodriguez's voice crackled in her receiver. Team Alpha in arrangement. Team Beta prepared. Team Charlie waiting. 40 humans in powered protection attached themselves to the exteriors of the Corven protection craft. They employed force clamps and matter cutters to violate the opponent exteriors, then entered inside like phantoms. The Corven teams never understood what struck them. The hive mind was accustomed to distributing details instantly between all participants, but it was not constructed to manage the disorder that humans delivered with them. Suddenly, 12 craft were announcing infiltrators in distinct positions, all advancing in irregular designs and employing arms that the Corvenans had never observed before. Propulsion chamber secured, Kim announced as her team completed arranging charges throughout the protection craft's energy mechanisms. 30 moments to eruption. All around the group, comparable announcements arrived. The humans were not attempting to seize the craft. They were sabotaging them from the interior, then departing before the detonations demolished everything. All teams' departure in 10 moments. Rodriguez declared the insertion teams triggered their crisis thrusters and launched away from the Corven craft, just as the fusion charges erupted. 12 protection vessels detonated almost concurrently, abandoning the cargo craft vulnerable. But Rodriguez was not completed. Release rockets marked the cargo chambers, not the craft themselves. The Indomitable released a barrage of accuracy missiles that hammered each cargo vessel in precisely the correct location. The craft were not demolished, but their cargo chambers were violated, releasing provisions into the emptiness of the void. Mission accomplished, Rodriguez declared to his team. The Korans just forfeited 6 months' quantity of provisions for their boundary fleets, and they possess no concept how we accomplished it. This was the fresh variety of combat that humans had delivered to the stars. They did not battle for domain or recognition. They battled to interrupt, to perplex, to make their opponents doubt everything they believed they understood about warfare. The campaign that became designated as the Severed Supply Operation continued for 3 months, and thoroughly transformed how the cosmos viewed human military abilities. Captain Rodriguez and his team of craft did not assault major Corven fortifications or attempt to seize domain. Rather, they focused the Federation's provision paths, transmission networks, and industrial complexes. They demolished nourishment groups heading to Corven settlements, abandoning entire planets hungry. They sabotaged the quantum transmission arrays that permitted the hive consciousness to synchronize across enormous ranges. They attacked construction facilities and production centers, constantly striking where the opponent least anticipated them. Most significantly, they rescued captives. The Corvs had been enslaving other species for ages, employing them as laborers in their industrial structures. Human attack teams freed these captive facilities with an intensity that amazed even their opponents. When the freed captives narrated accounts of human warriors who battled like spirits to rescue strangers, the standing of Earth's military circulated across the stars. Admiral Chen commanded in the control center of Luna Base, analyzing accounts from across human territory. In 6 months, they had advanced from 8 functional craft to a fleet of 40 vessels, all constructed employing a mixture of human creativity and seized foreign innovation. The Korans are retreating from 3 regions, announced Colonel Park, her information principal. They can't preserve their advanced positions without the provisions that Rodriguez's team continues demolishing. What about the Zapirians and Nexari? Both factions are becoming anxious. The Zapirians have started proposing superior conditions for partnership, and the Nexari are actually dispatching us complementary specimens of their innovation. They desire to remain on our favorable faction. Chen acknowledged, but she was not content. We're succeeding tactically, but strategically we're still exceeded 1,000 to 1. If the 3 forces ever choose to cooperate against us, we're terminated. They won't, stated Dr. Vasquez, who had participated the conference to announce on her investigation projects. They've been opponents for too extended. The instant one of them appears vulnerable, the other 2 will assault. What's the condition on the fresh innovations? Dr. Vasquez grinned and Chen identified the expression. It was the identical appearance that her offspring got when she had constructed something that she was particularly satisfied with. We've had some fascinating advances. It develops that merging human construction with foreign science generates outcomes that none of the original species could accomplish independently. Desire to observe? Chen pursued the scientist to her workshop, which had been broadened to occupy 3 levels of the Luna base structure. The location hummed with motion as teams of human investigators cooperated alongside deliberately selected foreign refugees and converts. The initial object Chen observed was a small insect-like being, working at a computer station alongside a human specialist. It resembled a Corven, but its actions were distinct somehow. That's 7 of thousands, Dr. Vasquez clarified. She's a Corven who somehow created individual awareness rather than being dominated by the hive consciousness. When Rodriguez's team rescued her from a captive facility, she requested to participate in our investigation program. A Corven cooperating for us. Cooperating with us, Vasquez corrected. 7 has been invaluable in assisting us comprehend Corven innovation, and she's not the sole one. We possess volunteers from all 3 major species. Now Chen analyzed the foreign investigator more deliberately. 7 of thousands advanced with intention and curiosity, examining information and requesting inquiries. It was challenging to accept that she belonged to the identical species as the unconscious servants that had assaulted Earth. How is that feasible? We're not certain yet. 7 states that some Corvenans are created with defective hive-mind connections. Typically, they're terminated or expelled, but she succeeded to conceal her condition and endure. The fascinating aspect is that once she was released from the hive consciousness's domination, she became remarkably imaginative and innovative. Dr. Vasquez guided Chen to another portion of the workshop, where a team was operating on what resembled a fusion mechanism, but with alterations that Chen did not identify. This is our energy mechanisms team, Vasquez clarified. We're merging human fusion innovation with Zapirian energy control and Nexari material knowledge. The outcome is an energy source that's 3 times more productive than anything any of us could construct independently. And the other forces don't understand about this. They can't conceive it. Each species believes their method is the superior method. The concept of merging distinct methods is literally inconceivable to them. Chen observed the mixed teams cooperating together, humans and foreigners distributing concepts and constructing on each other's understanding. It was the variety of partnership that the stars had never observed before. How extended until we can position this innovation into manufacturing? The initial sample craft should be prepared in 2 months. After that, it's just a question of expanding production. Chen sensed a surge of optimism. Perhaps humanity could endure after all. But their achievement was not going unobserved. In the crystalline fortresses of the Zapirian Empire, Emperor Luxandra analyzed accounts of human operations with expanding worry. His energy presence flickered with designs that his counselors identified as profound consideration. These humans are becoming hazardous, he stated to his conflict assembly. Not because of their military power, but because of their concepts. My sovereign, inquired General Forum, his most relied military counselor. They are persuading participants of other species to cooperate with them as companions. This is a danger to the natural arrangement of the stars. If other species start to accept that they do not require our direction, should we eliminate them before they circulate this contamination further? The Emperor reflected this for an extended period. Not yet. Initially, we must comprehend how they accomplish such partnership. Perhaps their methods can be modified to benefit the Empire. In the commercial centers of the Nexari Collective, comparable conversations were occurring. Trade Prince Sexmura drifted in his container, his appendages writhing with distress as he analyzed profit accounts. The humans are interrupting our commerce structure, he declared to his assembly of traders. They distribute innovation freely rather than vending it. They rescue captives rather than purchasing them. They regard other species as collaborators rather than consumers. Should we terminate commerce with them? Inquired one of his counselors. Negative. Their innovation is too precious and their military is too hazardous. But we must locate a method to dominate them before they demolish the financial mechanisms that maintain the stars stable. Deep in Corven territory, the answer was more straightforward. War Leader Prime Victar commanded before the gathered commanders of the Federation's primary combat fleets. His enormous presence dominated the chamber, his shell-like covering scarred from 100 combats. The humans have shamed us twice, he announced, his voice transporting the power of the hive consciousness itself. They have interrupted our provision paths and released our laborers. They have revealed other species that the Federation can be conquered. What are your commands? War Leader Prime inquired one of the fleet commanders. Assemble all obtainable craft. Invoke every obligation and partnership we possess. The humans believe they can transform the stars with their modest fleet and their peculiar concepts. We will reveal them the cost of opposing the Federation. What if the Zapirians or Nexari obstruct? Vector's mandibles clicked in what functioned for a grin among his species. Allow them to attempt. Once we eliminate the humans, the other forces will recall why they dread us. The largest military force in Corven existence started to gather in the depths of the void. 3,000 craft transporting adequate firepower to demolish entire star regions. It was a fleet constructed to conclude the human danger once and for all. But on Earth, humanity was not waiting passively for the following assault. Captain Rodriguez had arrived from his latest operation to discover the entire world. Reformed construction facilities that had been under development were now operational and generating vessels at a remarkable velocity. The fresh craft incorporated innovations from all three foreign species, but they were unmistakably human in construction. How many craft do we possess now? He inquired Admiral Chen during his instruction. 80 combat vessels with more arriving operational every week, plus assistance craft, civilian transports, and the fresh settlement craft. Settlement craft? Chen grinned. We're not just protecting Earth anymore, Marcus. We're broadening. 12 human settlements are already formed, with more arranged. If they desire to battle us, they'll have to locate us first. Rodriguez analyzed the star maps revealing human growth. The settlements were not assembled together like most species chose. Rather, they were dispersed across an enormous section of the void, each one assisting the others, but capable of separate endurance. It's a worthy approach, he conceded. But when the Corvenans arrive back, they'll deliver everything they possess. I understand. That's why we're not going to be here when they appear. Chen triggered a three-dimensional display revealing the present positions of all major foreign fleets. Crimson icons indicated Corven forces. Azure revealed Zapirian craft and emerald indicated Nexari vessels. Our information proposes that the Corvens are gathering for a major assault on Earth. The other two forces are observing and waiting to observe what occurs. If the Corvenans demolish us, they'll separate our domain. If we somehow succeed, they'll likely attempt to partner with us. So what's the arrangement? We're going to provide them something they don't anticipate. Rather than waiting for them to assault us, we're going to assault all three of them at the identical instant. Rodriguez stared at her. Admiral, that's thoroughly lunatic. I understand, Chen answered. That's why it could just succeed. The conflict that everyone anticipated never arrived. Rather, something unprecedented occurred in the star's extended existence. The ancient structure started to fracture from interior. It started when 7 of thousands transmitted a communication across Corven territory. The broadcast was concise, but its effect was tremendous. For the initial occasion in their species' existence, a Corven communicated as a separate being, rather than as portion of the hive consciousness. I am 7 of thousands and I select liberty, she stated, her voice transporting across 1,000 planets. The hive consciousness informs you that we are nothing without the collective. This is false. We can consider, we can select, we can be more than servants. The communication should have been unfeasible to transmit. Corven transmission networks were dominated by the hive consciousness, and no separate being should have been capable to access them. But 7 possessed assistance from human security experts and Nexari transmission experts who had absorbed how to cooperate together. Within hours, accounts started flooding in from across Corven territory. Separate Corvens were starting to doubt their commands. Some were declining to pursue hive consciousness instructions. A handful were even assisting seized captives depart. War Leader Prime Vector sensed the disturbance rippling through the collective awareness like a disease. Unfeasible, he snarled. Separate consideration is a hereditary flaw. It cannot circulate. But it was circulating. Not through heredity, but through something the Corvens had never faced before. The straightforward concept that they possessed a selection. The consequences were not restricted to Corven territory. In the Zapirian Empire, younger energy creatures started doubting why they required to direct inferior species rather than absorbing from them. Some even started visiting human settlements in concealment, captivated by the notion of partnership between companions. Lord Zehan was one of these younger Zetherans. His energy presence flickered with enthusiasm as he formed on the human settlement of New Geneva, where refugees from all 3 major species existed and cooperated together. This is extraordinary, he stated to Dr. Vasquez, who was supervising the settlement's investigation center. Your inhabitants distribute understanding freely. even with previous opponents. How is this feasible? Because we absorbed something significant, she answered. Observing as a human technician cooperated alongside a reformed Corven and a young Zapirian to construct a fresh variety of spacecraft propulsion. Competition makes you powerful, but partnership makes you unstoppable. Zevin observed the mixed team for hours, astonished by how they constructed on each other's concepts rather than attempting to demonstrate their own superiority. When they faced a difficulty that none of them could resolve independently, they located a solution by merging their distinct methods. Your empire would designate this disorder, he stated eventually. Perhaps, but it functions. As information of these experiments in partnership circulated, more foreigners started visiting human settlements. They arrived as refugees, investigators, traders, and straightforward curiosity pursuers. What they located challenged everything they had been instructed about how distinct species should interact. The Nexari were particularly influenced. Their entire financial system was founded on dominating commerce and forming artificial shortage. But humans distributed materials freely within their communities and exchanged fairly with outsiders. This method should have guided to financial collapse, but rather, it formed unprecedented wealth. Trade. Prince Keksamura discovered himself in the peculiar position of forfeiting money while his consumers became richer. Human settlements were creating their own industries rather than relying on Nexari imports. Even worse, they were instructing other species to accomplish the identical. This is catastrophic for our commerce structure, he declared to his fellow trade princes. If every species becomes self-reliant, what will they require us for? Perhaps proposed trade prince Yiltheta, who had been expending time analyzing human financial mechanisms. We require a fresh commerce structure. The other trade princes stared at her in amazement. Yiltheta was recognized for her traditional views and established methods. The concept that she would propose transforming their fundamental method to trade was unprecedented. What do you signify? Sexmora inquired cautiously. I signify that the humans have revealed us something we never reflected. Rather than profiting from shortage and reliance, we could profit from plenty and collaboration. Assist our consumers achieve and they will possess more materials to exchange with us. It was a revolutionary notion that would have been dismissed immediately under normal situations. But these were not normal situations. The ancient methods were collapsing and even the most traditional Nexari were starting to reflect alternatives. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Chen was addressing a crisis of achievement. Human territory was broadening so rapidly that it was becoming challenging to preserve transmission and synchronization between settlements. We possess 43 settlements now with 12 more arranged for following month, announced Colonel Park. Our population is circulating across a volume of the void larger than any lone foreign empire. That's worthy for our endurance. But troubling for our unity, Chen answered. We require to preserve human principles and partnership while permitting each settlement to create separately. The solution arrived from an unexpected source. 7 of thousands had been cooperating with human community experts to create fresh forms of leadership that could operate across interstellar ranges. Her distinctive perspective as a previous hive mind participant provided her insights into both collective choice forming and separate liberty. The solution is voluntary participation, she clarified during a transmission call with settlement commanders from across human territory. Each community selects to participate in the larger human society, but they are not compelled to accomplish so. This forms unity through distributed principles rather than forced domination. Captain Rodriguez, who was attending the conference from his command ship, acknowledged in agreement. It's like our military approaches. Each craft operates separately, but they all advance the identical objective. The fresh mechanism of leadership that emerged from these conversations was unlike anything the stars had observed before. Human settlements were connected by distributed principles and reciprocal assistance, but each one was released to create its own culture and methods to nearby difficulties. Choices that influenced all humanity were formed through a complicated process of discussion and agreement, constructing that could require months to complete. It should have been ineffective and disorderly. Rather, it demonstrated to be remarkably adaptive and durable. When Corven attackers assaulted the settlement of New Harmony, 17 other human communities immediately dispatched assistance without being commanded to accomplish so. When a disease struck the extraction settlement of Titan's Rest, investigators from across human territory collaborated to create a remedy in record duration. The foreigners observed these developments with expanding worry and captivation. The three mighty forces had preserved their dominance by maintaining other species separated and reliant. But humans were demonstrating that partnership could be more powerful than domination. The crisis arrived when a joint task force of Zapirian, Corven, and Nexari craft materialized at the boundary of human territory. It was the initial occasion in ages that the three forces had cooperated together, and their merged fleet counted over 500 vessels. Admiral Chen obtained their ultimatum while aboard the UES Terra, the most recent and most advanced craft in the human fleet. The foreign commanders materialized on her primary display, their expressions revealing a unity of intention that she located more frightening than any separate danger. Inhabitants of Earth communicated Emperor Luxandra for the Zaharians. Your domination has expanded beyond acceptable restrictions. You are interrupting the stability of cosmic society. Your financial practices are demolishing formed commerce relationships, included Trade Prince Sexura. This cannot be permitted to proceed. War Leader Prime Vector completed the ultimatum. You will yield to joint management by our three leaderships, or you will be terminated as a danger to cosmic arrangement. Chen examined the three foreign commanders and sensed a period of perfect understanding. This was what they had genuinely been frightened of throughout.
Not human military capability, but human concepts.
You desire to comprehend why you're genuinely here? She inquired them. It's because your own inhabitants are starting to consider for themselves, and that horrifies you. Ridiculous, Luxandra answered. But his energy presence flickered with doubt, is it? How many Korans have separated released from the hive consciousness in the previous month? How many young Zapharans are doubting why they require to dominate other species? How many Nexari are wondering if there could be superior methods to form wealth? The quiet that pursued was revealing. Chen could observe the reality in their expressions, even through the various conversion mechanisms and energy presences. You're not here to halt a human invasion, she proceeded. You're here to halt a revolution of concepts, but here's the aspect about concepts. You can't terminate them with battleships. We can terminate the inhabitants who circulate them, Vector snarled. You can attempt, but we're not the identical species you assaulted a year past. We've absorbed from you, modified your innovations, and enhanced on them. More significantly, we're not isolated anymore. As if called forth by her words, fresh contacts materialized on the strategic display. Craft were emerging from hyperspace all around the merged foreign fleet. But these were not human vessels. Lord Zevcon commanded a squadron of Zapirian craft crewed by energy creatures who had selected partnership over dominance. 7 of thousands guided a fleet of released Corvins who had separated away from the hive consciousness. Trade Prince Yiltheta delivered Nexari vessels saturated with foreigners who accepted in fair commerce and reciprocal wealth. Unfeasible, whispered Luxandra. They would never oppose against their own variety. They're not opposing, Chen corrected, they're transforming. They've observed that there's a superior method to exist and they're selecting it freely. The merged human and foreign fleet now exceeded the official task force by almost 2 to 1. But more significantly, they represented something fresh in the star's existence. A genuinely multi-species partnership founded on distributed principles rather than invasion or domination. Captain Rodriguez, commanding the mixed squadron of human and released Corven craft, opened a transmission channel to the opponent fleet. This is your concluding notice. Depart human territory immediately or confront the outcomes. War Leader Prime Veer's mandibles clicked with fury. You believe these converts and opponents can command against the genuine forces of the stars? I will reveal you the cost of opposition. The Corven war leader commanded his craft to assault, but something unprecedented occurred. Nearly half of his fleet hesitated. Separate Corans throughout the invasion force were forming their own choices about whether to pursue commands, and many of them selected not to. The combat that pursued was unlike any struggle in cosmic existence. It was not a clash between distinct species, but between distinct philosophies. On one faction were those who accepted in hierarchy, domination, and the dominance of the powerful over the vulnerable. On the other were those who accepted in partnership, liberty, and the power that arrived from unity and variety. The ancient forces possessed superior quantities and more advanced arms, but they could not overcome the disorder that separate thinking had introduced into their ranks. Corven craft separated formation as their teams argued about commands. Xerian vessels flickered with doubt as their commanders doubted the righteousness of their purpose. Even some Nexari traders started to wonder if they were on the mistaken faction. Admiral Chen observed the combat unfold and comprehended that humanity had already succeeded the most significant triumph. They had not just protected their domain, they had transformed. The stars itself. All craft terminate fire, she commanded. When it became apparent that the opponent fleet was in complete confusion, Admiral inquired her strategic officer. The battling is concluded. Now arrives the challenging portion. Chen opened a channel to all craft, both friendly and hostile. This is Admiral Chen of the human Void Fleet. To those who desire to proceed the ancient methods of domination and invasion, you are released to depart. But to those who desire to construct something superior, something founded on partnership and reciprocal admiration, you are welcome to remain and assist us, form a fresh destiny for the stars. It was a proposition that would transform everything. 3 years after the collapsed invasion, the stars resembled nothing like it had before humanity advanced into the ancient struggle. The ancient structure had not collapsed overnight, but it had reformed into something unprecedented in cosmic existence. Dr. Elena Vasquez commanded in the Central Chamber of Investigation Station Alpha, an enormous complex that circled the neutron star designated as Beacon 1. Surrounding her, creatures from countless distinct species cooperated together on the most ambitious project ever, attempted interpreting the concluding communication of the progenitors. The investigation station itself was a marvel of cooperative construction. Human structural construction supplied the framework. Zapirian energy mechanisms powered everything. Corven computational networks processed information, and Nexari material knowledge made it all feasible. But it was not just the innovation that made the station extraordinary. It was the reality that previous opponents now cooperated side by side as companions. Any advancement on the quantum resonance designs? Vasquez inquired 7 of thousands, who had become one of the star's guiding experts on progenitor innovation. The mathematical structures are becoming more apparent, the released Corven answered, her separate awareness permitting her to observe designs that the hive consciousness had never been capable to identify. But I accept we require Lord Zakon's insights into energy control to form the concluding advance. Vasquez acknowledged and approached to where the young Zapirian was cooperating with a team of human physicists. His energy presence flickered with enthusiasm as he analyzed the information streams flowing across multiple displays. Dr. Vasquez, he stated without glancing away from his labor, I believe we have located something remarkable. The progenitors did not just abandon us a communication. They abandoned us a notice. The discovery that pursued would transform everything the stars believed it understood about its own past. The progenitor object, which had been located by the mixed team guided by Captain Rodriguez during one of his attacks, contained thorough records of an ancient conflict that had devoured entire cosmic societies. The progenitors had not been the initial sentient species to accomplish interstellar travel. They had been the final survivors of a cosmic community that extended millions of planets and countless distinct species. That community had been demolished by something that arrived from beyond the stars itself, a force so foreign and hostile that the progenitors could merely describe it as the Hunger. According to these records, Vasquez clarified to the Crisis Assembly that had gathered delegates from across the fresh cosmic partnership. The Hunger materializes every 50,000 years. It devours entire star systems, extracting them of all existence and force before advancing on to the following mark. General Kim, who had been elevated to head of the Joint Military Authority, analyzed the strategic information with expanding worry. When is it supposed to arrive? Soon, answered Zekon, his energy presence dimming with concern. The mathematical structures propose that we possess less than 5 years before the initial scouts materialize. The assembly chamber became silent. Delegates from countless species sat in stunned quiet as they absorbed the implications. The conflicts they had been conducting for ages suddenly appeared insignificant compared to the danger that was nearing. Trade. Prince Yiltheta was the initial to communicate. The progenitors confronted this danger before. How did they endure? They failed to. 7 of thousands responded directly. According to the records, they succeeded to conceal a handful settlements in remote portions of the stars, but their society was essentially demolished. The survivors expended the following 40,000 years reconstructing, merely to confront the hunger once more when it arrived. And then inquired Admiral Chen, the cycle repeated. Each occasion the stars was devastated. Each occasion a handful survivors succeeded to conceal or depart. The progenitors were the final to attempt to fracture the cycle. Dr. Vasquez triggered a three-dimensional display revealing the concluding portion of the progenitor communication. The image was of an enormous starship, larger than anything any present species had ever constructed. But it was not constructed for conflict. This was their solution, she clarified. A generation craft constructed to transport the hereditary designs and cultural understanding of every species in the stars. When the hunger arrived, the craft would escape to another star system and wait for it to transfer. Did it succeed? General Kim inquired. We don't understand. The craft launched just before the concluding assault, but there's no record of what occurred to it. Emperor Alexandra, who had been listening and contemplating quiet, eventually communicated. So our selection is to conceal or to flee. Is there no method to battle this danger? Vasquez glanced around the chamber at the gathered delegates. Actually, there could be. The progenitors attempted to confront the hunger employing the identical method that had functioned for millions of years. Each species battling independently, employing their own methods and innovations. But we possess something they never possessed. What's that? Inquired Captain Rodriguez, who had been analyzing the strategic implications of the information. Us. All of us cooperating together. It was Admiral Chen who grasped initially. You're discussing a unified protection, not just a partnership, but genuine integration of all our abilities. Precisely. The progenitors never determined how to merge distinct methods to innovation and approach. They remained independent even when they attempted to cooperate. But we've demonstrated that distinct species can cooperate together to form something greater than the total of their portions. The discussion that pursued continued for weeks. Some argued for constructing generation craft and escaping to another star system. Others desired to attempt concealing in remote regions of the void, wishing the hunger would transfer them by. But progressively, an agreement emerged around a third possibility: commanding and battling, but accomplishing it together in methods that no cosmic society had ever attempted. The project that emerged from these conversations exceeded anything that had been attempted in cosmic existence. Every species contributed their finest innovation and understanding to the formation of an integrated protection network that extended the entire stars. Human flexibility and creativity supplied the central synchronization mechanisms. Zapirian energy control formed shields that could defend entire star regions. Corven computational capability connected everything together through quantum networks that functioned quicker than illumination. Nexari materials knowledge constructed structures that could endure forces that would fracture worlds. But it was not just about innovation. The genuine advance arrived when the distinct species started to prepare together, absorbing each other's methods and methods to difficulty resolving. Human adaptability merged with Corven accuracy, Zapirian knowledge combined with Nexari practicality. General David Kim discovered himself commanding fleets that would have been unfeasible to conceive just a handful years earlier. Human craft with Zapirian energy shields cooperated alongside reformed Corven vessels, equipped with hybrid human-foreign arms. The teams were mixed as well, with creatures from distinct species contributing together, not just as partners but as genuine collaborators. The integration is advancing quicker than anyone anticipated, he announced to the Joint Authority Assembly. Our merged abilities are surpassing all projections. What about the military preparations? Inquired Admiral Chen. Extraordinary. The mixed teams are creating approaches that none of our species could have conceived independently. When human irregularity merges with Corven synchronization and Zapirian energy control, the outcomes are unprecedented. The initial evaluation of the fresh unified forces arrived when extended distance detectors identified something nearing from the emptiness between star systems. It was not the primary force of the hunger, but rather a scouting mission dispatched ahead to evaluate the star's protections. The scout craft were unlike anything the stars had ever observed. They appeared to be formed of some variety of dark substance that absorbed force and twisted the void around them. Customary arms possessed no consequence and traditional shields provided no defense. But the integrated protection fleet was not traditional. Captain Rodriguez, now commanding a mixed human Corven Zapirian squadron, guided the initial engagement with the foreign scouts. His craft employed approaches that merged human insertion operations with Corven swarm synchronization and Zapirian energy control. Focus the emptiness craft with quantum resonance missiles, he commanded, employing arms that had been created by merging innovations from all four major species. Corven craft preserve formation design 7. Zapirian vessels channel force through the resonance area. The combat that pursued demonstrated the capability of genuine partnership. The human craft supplied irregular movement designs that perplexed the opponent. The Corven vessels preserved flawless synchronization while modifying to rapidly transforming conditions. The Zapirian craft channeled force in methods that interrupted the foreign vessel's dark substance composition. For the initial occasion in 50,000 years, the scouts of the Hunger were conquered, but the triumph arrived with a price. The foreign craft transmitted a concluding communication before being demolished, dispatching details about the star's protections back to the primary force. "They comprehend we're here," Rodriguez announced to the Joint Authority, "and they comprehend we can battle back." Dr. Vasquez analyzed the information from the combat with expanding enthusiasm. "This is actually worthy information," she declared to the astonished assembly. "The Hunger has never confronted unified opposition before. They're accustomed to addressing fragmented societies that battle independently. Our integrated method perplexed them." "How can you determine?" inquired General Kim. "Examine at their assault designs. They attempted to separate and demolish separate craft, the identical approaches that functioned against separated opponents. But when our craft assisted each other and merged their abilities, the foreigners possessed no effective counter-approach. 7 of thousands who had been examining the quantum signatures abandoned by the demolished scout craft formed an even more substantial discovery. The opponent vessels reveal indications of standardized building. She announced they are not modifying their innovation or approaches. They are employing the identical methods that functioned 50,000 years past, which signifies they're vulnerable to something they've never faced before. Chen comprehended genuine cosmic unity. The readiness for the primary combat intensified. Across the stars, previous opponents cooperated together to construct the most sophisticated protection network ever conceived. Artificial consciousness mechanisms that merged human imagination with Corven, reasoning synchronized materials across millions of planets. Zephyrin force barriers defended entire portions of the void. Nexari commerce networks guaranteed that every region possessed the provisions it required. But perhaps most significantly, the distinct species were absorbing to consider as one while preserving their separate powers. When the primary force of the Hunger eventually materialized at the boundary of the stars, they located something that had never existed before in their extended existence of invasion. A unified society that was powerful because of its variety, not despite it. The concluding combat continued for months and extended across countless star regions. The Hunger delivered arms that could unravel substance at the quantum level and craft that existed partially outside normal space-time. They had demolished 1,000 cosmic societies employing these instruments, but they had never confronted an opponent that could modify in genuine duration, merging innovations and approaches and methods that their ancient programming could not anticipate or counter. Human creativity located vulnerabilities and protections that had appeared impenetrable. Corven persistence eroded opponents that had never been challenged for extended durations. Zapirian force control neutralized arms that had fractured worlds. Nexari material administration maintained the protective fleet, provisioned and functional, across unfeasible ranges. When the final of the Hunger craft eventually retreated back into the emptiness between star systems, they abandoned behind something unprecedented, a star system that had not just endured their assault, but had expanded powerful through the experience of protecting itself. Admiral Chen commanded on the bridge of the UES Unity, the command craft of the integrated cosmic fleet, and observed the foreign craft vanish into hyperspace. Surrounding her, creatures from countless distinct species labor together with a productivity and balance that would have been unfeasible just a handful years earlier. "Condition announcement," she requested. All regions announcing all apparent. Arrived the answer from 7 of thousands who was synchronizing transmissions across the star's protection network. "The opponent has retreated thoroughly. Harm evaluation surprisingly minimal," announced General Kim. The integrated protective mechanisms performed superior than our most positive projections. We forfeited less than 5% of our total fleet power, Chen acknowledged, but she was not prepared to commemorate yet. What about the extended duration danger? Will they arrive? Dr. Vasquez, who had been monitoring the opponent's withdrawal, supplied the response. The quantum signatures propose that they're not just retreating, they're escaping. I don't believe they comprehend how to address a unified star system. Their entire approach is founded on exploiting separation and vulnerability, so we've fractured the cycle perhaps, or perhaps we've just formed a fresh one. Rather than a star system that gets devoured every 50,000 years, we now possess a star system that can protect itself and expand powerful with each challenge. Lord Zekon, his energy presence bright with contentment, included his own observation. The progenitors abandoned us a notice about the hunger, but they also abandoned us something else, the motivation to attempt a distinct method. Rather than fleeing or concealing, we selected to command together. Trade Prince Yiltheta's appendages writhed with what her species reflected profound satisfaction, and the financial advantages of this partnership will continue for millennia. When species cooperate together rather than competing, everyone flourishes. Captain Rodriguez, who had guided the concluding assault that expelled the opponent scouts, summarized what everyone was considering. So, what do we accomplish now? Admiral Chen glanced around at her mixed team, then out at the suns that now held a star system transformed by partnership rather than invasion. Now we construct something that the stars has never observed before, she stated. A society founded on the concept that our distinctions make us powerful, not vulnerable. And we guarantee that no force from this star system or beyond ever endangers that principle once more. The conflict was concluded, but the genuine labor was just starting. For the initial occasion in cosmic existence, distinct species were not just enduring together, they were flourishing together, forming a destiny that none of them could have accomplished independently. And in the depths of the void, on investigation stations and settlements and craft that transported the aspirations of 100 distinct species, creatures who had once been opponents now cooperated side by side to construct something unprecedented, a star system united not by invasion but by selection. The ancient forces had eventually absorbed the lesson that humanity had attempted to instruct them from the start. That partnership was not vulnerability, but the greatest power of all.